What's up, you guys? It's Jason, your FLX e-bike specialist. Today I'm going to show you how to remove the battery from your Babymaker. It's an integrated battery. Nobody else is doing an e-bike like this. It keeps it sexy and sleek and lightweight. I'm going to show you how to remove the battery. First, I'm going to show you the tools that we're going to need to do this simple job. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, a 5mm Allen key. You're gonna need a Torx bit. This is a T25 is the size, and a pair of snips to remove some zip ties. You might even need some zip ties to reinstall once you've cut these ones off. To start this job, I would recommend just removing the lever from the handlebar, removing the zip ties that hold the cables together, and then simply removing the front wheel so that all you're left with is just the fork standalone, and the rest of the job is simple to complete after that. So we're gonna take some of these off, making sure not to cut through the cables. Now that you've cut the zip ties off, you have your brake cable free and clear. Before you remove the front tire from the bike, you're gonna use your Torx T25 bit to remove the brake lever from the handlebars. Try to hold on to all the pieces so you don't lose anything. The lever comes free and clear, and put everything in a place where you're not gonna kick it or lose it. Once you have the lever taken off of the bars, you can just kind of let it hang to the side right here. You're gonna remove the front wheel by simply undoing the front skewer. Once that's off, you're gonna loosen this up by going to the left. Once it's loose, you should be able to slip the front wheel right out of the bike, free and clear, and everything is out of your way. All right, guys, once you've got the front wheel completely removed from the bike, you're gonna drop the forks. To drop the forks, you're gonna do this by removing the stem. 3 simple bolts are gonna remove the stem from the forks. To do that, you just are going to need a 5mm Allen key. Start with your top bolt. Simply go to the left to loosen that off. You're gonna completely remove this bolt. Go. And again, put it somewhere safe so you don't lose it. The next bolts to remove, there's one on this side, there's one on this side. So both of those to the left. You want to make sure to hold on to the forks at this point if you have the bike in the air. And these ones on the stem you don't have to fully remove, you just have to loosen them up so that the whole stem will slide right off. Make sure, you guys, that you have a hand on the forks holding that down, because the forks, as you can see, they're ready to just slip right on out. So go ahead and grab the handlebars. You can let those hang by the cable just to the side here. Once those are hanging, make sure you take a look, continue holding the forks, take a look up at the top of the fork, and you want to remove all the spacers. There's 3 of them, and you want to remove the cone. This is going to also allow you just to simply slide straight down and remove the forks, free and clear, spacers in hand, in a safe space. Put the forks down nice and easy, somewhere that they're also safe. Once the forks are completely out, it's good just to note and to mention, you'll have a spacer here. That's another part you want to put in a safe place. Now what you're looking at on the top side of the head tube and the bottom side are your headset bearings. It's imperative that these remain seated just as they are in the bike. The next step to get to the battery, we're basically right here, is going to be to remove the 2 screws for the battery plate right here on the front of the head tube. These bolts are on a bike that is pre-production. The full production Babymakers may have a different type of head here for the screw to remove the plate. But as for now, these are just Phillips screws. Number 1 and number 2 is gonna come out, and we'll be able to use a finger on the back side of the plate to just pop the plate right out of there. Reach in. All right, guys, now that you have the battery cover plate taken off, you're gonna see inside, you'll see some red straps. These red straps are for pulling the battery out. Before you can pull the battery out, though, you're gonna notice thick red and black wires and a thinner set of red and black wires. These wires on one side attach to the battery, on the other side are gonna attach to the controller, which is gonna be the next piece we need to pull out before we can pull the battery out. In order to do that, you're gonna grab the thick red and black wires, and you're gonna start pulling nice and slowly. You'll notice sometimes that the wires will pull out from their connector, and that's okay. Go ahead and just keep giving a little pull. Now you have your battery disconnected from the controller. Try to gain access to one of the wires that's inside of there and give a slight pull. If you notice while I'm pulling on this, you're gonna see that the controller starts to slide straight out, coming out of the top tube directly towards you. Keep pulling, you'll notice that some wires are coming out, nice and slow. Don't pull too hard, you don't wanna pull anything. All right, and before you know it, the controller is gonna just come sliding right out the front. And there you are with the controller. This is the brain of the bike. It controls everything that the bike is doing electronically. Once you have that pulled out of the top tube, it's gonna be super simple, making sure that all your wires are out of the way, to just grab the battery straps, and you're just gonna pull up and out. You might have to give it a bit of a tug, but just keep wiggling side to side. Over here, once you get enough of your skinny wires out, you're gonna notice a connector. Just undo that connector. That was the one connecting the charge port to the battery. And then from here, you can simply give a tug and the battery should just slide right out here for you. And there you go. The battery is out of the bike. You could re-swap for a new battery or do what you gotta do. All right, guys, this is also how you're going to remove the controller from the bike. Should this need to be replaced. You also have connections on the controller should you have to replace something like the display. That's gonna plug directly into the controller. Other features, if you had to replace the motor plugs into the controller as well. Always give us a shout if there's any help that you need with any of these processes. Now let's go ahead and reinstall everything. We're gonna take the controller and we're gonna put that back into the top tube first. So the reason that we do this is so that you can get a bunch of these wires out of the way so that you'll be able to just simply slide the battery back down into the down tube. So we're gonna start with the end that doesn't have wires, is gonna go in first into the top tube. Just gonna slide that right on in to the top tube. When installing all the wires in the controller into the top tube, you may need a tool to push lightly on the wires and the controller to get it to set as far back as you need it to. But don't use anything that's metal, and definitely make sure that it's insulated because this is a live battery and live electronics. So just have caution when you're doing this. Once you get the controller installed into the top tube, you can see about how far I have it in there. At this point, the controller is not as far back as it needs to be, but we're gonna go ahead and start installing the battery so that once this is partially in, we can move the controller back, battery down, controller back, battery down until everything is where it should be. So you'll want this flat part of the battery to be up because the cables are gonna run across the top of that, giving us a little bit of extra space when we're sliding the battery in. Once you get the battery back down in there, you're gonna be able to make your connections for the battery to the controller. You're gonna go black to black, red to red with the thick wires to the connectors from the controller. I always like to start with the black wire to the black wire. That's the ground wire. That keeps you from electric discharge or shock. So black is connected to black, red gets connected to red. Your charging cable will connect to the charging cable. The connector can only go together one way. Now your connections are made, controller to battery. You're gonna just reinstall the wires. You're also going to be pushing the controller all the way back. If you do push on the wires, make sure you push nice and easily so that you don't break or tear any of the wires. All right, guys, we got the controller seated back where it should be. We have the wires pushed back in. We've also gone ahead and reinstalled the straps, just push them back. Inside of the head tube, you just want as much space free and clear as you possibly can because now we're gonna reinstall the forks into the head tube. Nice and easy, slide this up and through, making sure that nothing is catching as far as the forks on the wires. If you guys removed any bearings, this is the time to make sure that you reinsert them and make sure that everything is installed properly and flush. Once you get the forks pushed all the way back up in, you're gonna grab your cone spacer. You have your other 3 spacers that you put in a safe space. Those are gonna simply sit right on 1, 2, and 3. Once you have that on there, you're gonna grab your handlebars Make sure that your wires are running out the front so nothing tangles. You're gonna slip the stem directly back down on top of the forks. You're gonna grab your stem cap and you're just gonna reinstall that so that the forks stay on the bike against the handlebars and nothing is gonna drop away from you. You can worry about aligning everything and straightening it up when you go for your final tightening. Right now we're just getting the forks and the handlebars on the bike. The next step is gonna be to reinstall the brake lever to the handlebar so it's not dangling anymore. Your brake lever may be slightly different as far as how it attaches to the bars, depending on which Babymaker you have or if you've put your own brakes on the bike. The next step is to reinstall the front wheel. Once we have the front wheel installed, we're gonna basically straighten the bars, tighten up the stem, and then we're gonna reinstall the battery faceplate. The reason we left the faceplate off was so that we could make sure that no wires were getting caught up or jammed up in there. You'll wanna make sure to do the same. If you're unfamiliar with installing the front wheel, just check the assembly video and there's some good tips right there. We're gonna go ahead and finish up by tightening up the stem. The top cap is a tensioner, so you don't need this to be super tight, just slightly snug, and then you're gonna make sure to tighten the stem bolts on the sides to make sure that nothing comes out of alignment. The final step here is to reinstall the battery faceplate. We're gonna go ahead and put that back on. Make sure your screws are nice and tight. The last step after you get these faceplate screws tightened in is to just throw some zip ties back around your cables so everything is nice and clean. That wraps up how to change out the battery as well as change the controller on your Babymaker. I hope you guys have a great time and enjoy the ride.